Andrew Rennick, and I'm the chair of the Provo City Board of Adjustment. Welcome to our June meeting. We have just one agenda item today. Before we jump into that, let's first recognize that Wes Marriott is having his last meeting with us, having completed his 5-year term, and we're grateful for his contribution. And with that, let's just go ahead and do a roll call. If each of you would state your name and any conflicts of interest that might exist.
Eric Chase, no conflicts.
Maria Winden, no conflicts.
Laurie Urquiaga, no conflicts.
Wes Marriott, no conflicts.
And I also have no conflicts. So with that, I will go ahead and read the item into the record. Gaye Lee Page requests a variance from section 141008001 front yard requirement from 20 feet to 15 feet in order to construct a new garage in the R18 residential, one family residential zone located at 1425 East, 330 South, Provost neighborhood. And I will invite staff to come and make their report.
Thank you, board. I am Nancy Robison. I am one of the planners. And so the property is at 1425 East, 330 South. The current zone is R18. The acreage of that property is 0.18. The current legal use for the property is single-family residential home in the R18 zone. The home was built in 1965. Staff has not heard from anyone in the neighborhood with issues about this request at this time. Section 14.10.08001B describes the minimum front yard setback standards for garage of 20 feet. Ms. Page is requesting a variance to the front yard setback at 1425 East, 330 South from 20 feet to 15 feet in order to add an addition to her home to provide for more living space. Ms. Page has expressed that to build this addition, it would require a portion of the existing garage to be converted into living space and the new garage to be extended out into the current setback. The proposed addition would add approximately 170 square feet to the home. So literal enforcement of the title would not cause unreasonable hardship for the applicant. While more living space is desirous and understandable, the existing home meets the standards for a single-family home. Denial of the request would not constitute an unreasonable hardship. The surrounding properties share similar shape and topography to the subject property, so there's no special circumstances. And the substantial property right for this neighborhood is a single-family home on the lot. If the variance were given, it would not substantially affect the general plan. One reason for the 20-foot setback is so that cars parked in the driveway don't hang over the sidewalk. The home has a one-car garage, which would likely increase the need for parking on the street. The applicant has stated that they would add an additional driveway parking on the side of the house. Staff feels that this request would be inconsistent with the spirit of the title. After the staff report was submitted, the applicant sent an email with additional information. And for conclusion, while the staff understands and appreciates the desire to expand and stay in a home, when evaluating the request against the variance criteria above, it was not sufficiently demonstrated that all the required criteria were met. Do you have any questions for me? I could show some, I should be showing some pictures too. So this is the property outlined in red and then surrounding neighborhood. And the picture of the front of the house, front elevation, side elevations. This is the existing main floor. And this would be the proposed addition and remodel, taking away the garage space and expanding, converting that into living space and expanding out to into the setback.
Any questions?
Just one. You stated that that you feel this request would be inconsistent with the spirit of the title. Were you referring to that the reason for the setback is so that the cars parked in the driveway will not overhang the sidewalk, and so there shouldn't be a setback so that a car can park in the driveway, but you indicated that the homeowner said that she would create another driveway on the side of the house. And so were you referring to the creation of the second driveway as being inconsistent?
No, the second driveway wouldn't be inconsistent. We don't want to set a precedent where we're allowing, more people just in Provo to be able to say, well, we're going to decrease our front yard setback because of the varying ranges of driveway lengths and sizes. And so that's all we're saying about the spirit of the title.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
If the applicant or their representative would like to come and make their presentation to the board, now would be a great time.
I wrote it all down because I'm forgetful. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board today. My name is Gaye Lee Page. It's a privilege to be here. I have enjoyed living in Utah County for over 30 years. The last 6 have been in Provo, proudly proclaimed and awarded as Family City. As some of you I know have experienced the joy of having grandchildren in your lives, you will see why I am passionate about having a room large enough to see them all in. There are only 12, but they are incredibly important. This is the only way they can be together in my home. My own children were not able to grow up knowing their cousins, and it's my goal that this next generation won't suffer the same fate. I would have brought the local ones, but it's better that I didn't. When Kirsten Grimmer built my home in 1965, I'm sure she built as much house as she could afford as a single woman. The subsequent 7 occupants in my home have each made improvements as the years have passed, but it still remains insufficient for the needs of a family, evidenced by the many times it has been sold. These families that have left Provo because of the limitations of this home are a loss to the city. I have explored adding onto the north side, the rear of the home, but it is a drastic, unstable, abrupt slope which cannot be seen from the aerial photo. It negates that option entirely. As an aside, I've already redone the patio because it was moving. As proof of this, the homes on each side of me have walkout basements. If I were to be allowed to remodel my garage and move it forward so the back wall is even with the front wall of the home, it would make a huge difference in the usability of this property. It will be tastefully done with continuity to the rest of the structure. It will leave a 15-foot driveway, which cuts it close. The average length of the American or the US car is 14.7. As you can see, I have willing, supportive neighbors here with me today who are all in favor of this remodel. There are more watching online. At least they said they were. I am invested in these people and this street and plan to stay in this home, reducing just a little bit the amount of turnover that we have naturally from BYU. If I were to be allowed to use a bit of the setback to accomplish this goal, it would only improve the property and make it a more usable home for future occupants. As I stated in my email, I have plans to pave the section east of the driveway, like she said, effectively doubling the available parking. I only own one vehicle, so the only time there would possibly be a car partly covering the sidewalk is when grandchildren are visiting for the afternoon. I'm willing to answer any other questions you may have, and thank you each for your consideration here today. Wes, you could go out on a high note.
Questions for the applicant?
I have a question. So just for some clarification, so we all understand, the goal of this change is more living space, not more garage space.
Correct.
Okay. So it's just an adjustment of moving the garage.
If we can go back one slide to that where it says dining right there, that's actually big enough for a table and chairs, a tiny table and 4 chairs. And it's cut off from the living space, the small living room. I mean, they're not inclusive. So if we could do that, it would make a room big enough to actually use.
Okay. That helps. So it's a living space that you're trying to gain.
Yes. Yes.
And then just some clarification on, because this will help your case as far as if it's unreasonable hardship or not. The back area, tell us a little bit more about how that's unbuildable maybe, because that would help us just understand, because for us, like staff had mentioned, our whole goal is to meet the criteria that is set up for the Board of Adjustment. So
I understand.
if you can prove to us, which we want you to help in any way we can, that it's unbuildable back there, then, or whatever, just maybe talk a little bit more about that to help us understand.
Sure.
Yeah.
I tried to take pictures and it's just grass. It's just green and it doesn't show anything but green. But if you go out the back door onto the little patio, it's an immediate 4 foot or 5. And it's only maybe this far. It drops that fast. So, and I know it's not stable because I've already replaced that patio because it was moving away from the house. So to do that would be enormous, to try to do that. And it would be on the back of the kitchen and I would end up building 4 times as much space to be able to get to it. Does that make sense? Because it wouldn't be congruent with anything. It would have to be its own room, which we'd have to basically start from scratch. Does that help? Can you picture that? Goes out and then it goes. Phew.
Other questions?
The driveway that you state you want to build, excuse me, would that be to the east of your current driveway?
Yes.
And how far would that go up towards your house? Would it go just to the, well, just how far would that go?
It would go about even where the porch is, the front of the porch. It's be about 29 feet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Right there. Hmm?
There's a laser pointer here, I think.
One
Can
further
you show her where you
question.
mean the porch is? If you push that button, yeah.
Yeah, Porch is right there. No, I'm too shaky. There's the porch. The driveway goes here now. And the other lane would go across there as well.
Okay, do you have plans to put that second driveway in regardless if you get the variance or not?
That's a consideration. This will help if I
Okay.
do it all at once.
All right, thank you.
Do all of the neighbors on that side also have that steep fall off that you're describing?
They do, that's why they have walkout basements. They all have basements except me.
I was just going to ask to show the next picture. Okay. Trying to figure out exactly how that fits on. And the houses around you are also taller. I'm
They are.
seeing.
They are, and if you look right there, there's an 18-inch space between that wall and my property line. When Provo said they could enclose their carport, no one came out and looked to see that it was 18 inches away.
Okay.
So yes, it's taller and closer.
So you are talking about putting the driveway essentially back to where the fence is now.
Correct.
Okay. Will that fill in the whole side?
It will. It
okay.
will. And that's a winter picture because the garbage cans are in front of the fence.
Okay, thank you.
Would your addition, if you were granted the variance, would it affect the porch? Or would it just extend the sidewalk alongside the garage?
If you can see right there, there are stairs go down to the driveway. There is no sidewalk at the moment. So I would end up putting a sidewalk out to the side of the garage, which will also make the driveway a little bit wider. I don't foresee enlarging the porch. It would be really fun, but it would be really pricey. It would be awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Just another question, as far as, so that space you're trying to create, is that, is it a room or living room or?
It will be kind of a great room because we'll have living and dining room areas that are exclusive now. Dining room is a loose term because it's this big.
Yeah,
They will be connected in a big L shape, one big room.
yeah,
So I could
Okay.
actually move the table out from the wall. The other one. Well, if you see how it is now, you can't sit in the living room and converse with people in the dining area because there's a wall in the doorway in the way.
right. So, and maybe you don't know this, but currently, as is to the, street, how far are you from the garage to the street?
29 feet.
You're 29 feet?
Mhm.
So you have 9 feet about to
And-
build out if,
And I need 14.
and you need 14.
Yeah.
Have you considered the other side or is that buildable?
The other side where I have 18 inches.
No, so the other side of the garage, so this living room area, building out right there instead?
There's not really enough space. I mean,
Is it buildable? Is it, again, we're just trying to find the right questions the right answers, what you're trying to get. I
That's an
guess.
idea.
Does that go into the setback is one of the questions?
Yeah, that's kind of what
How
I'm figuring
close
out.
is
It
the
wouldn't.
side
Oh, I
to the
don't-
house? How much room do you have between the side of the house and the lot line? Do you know?
Oh, he's talking about in front of the living room.
Yeah, so
Oh.
if you did the living room and you needed 14 feet,
Oh, coming out.
would you be able to build that all the way out without us? Because truthfully, again, and Bill already knows this about me. I'm a rabble rouser. So, I'm like, if we can figure out a way to approve the variance, then I would vote that. Not everyone here is that way, but if there are other options, then it's hard to approve a variance because we have to follow those actual uses. And if there isn't another way to build it, then that's generally how we do the variance. If it's buildable somewhere else, then it's hard to approve that. So if you tell us, hey, it's not buildable there because of X, Y, and Z, and this is the only option, then that'd be, that's our approach with voting for things.
That I suppose could be done, but doesn't help the dining area situation at all. Or the continuity of the whole plan. I think that's probably,
Yeah, that makes sense. We just have to ask the questions.
that's a
so that we
good
can-
question. That's a
yeah.
good question.
But yeah,
I'm picturing in my head how that could look.
we'll have a comment after we're done, then public comment can be after, so.
True. That would also change significantly the roof.
Yeah, it would affect that. I'm wondering about maybe going into that front and moving the garage out 9 feet so that you stayed within the 20 feet, but you kind of expanded a bit. So you'd have some way, but I don't know how that compares with the roof line and the garage and all of that.
I looked at that. It really chops it up. Kind of defeats the purpose.
Okay.
I mean, we've been chewing on this for a while.
Sure. It's a major change.
Okay, well, no more questions? Okay. Okay, so seeing no more questions, well, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And we will open up for public comment. If anyone from, oh, that's right. Is the neighborhood chair involved or here today? Okay, that's fine. If she were here, we'd give her priority to speak first, but
She said best wishes, good luck.
okay. So if anyone from the, do you call us an audience? It just seems odd to call it an audience. We're not that entertaining. But would like to speak. Anyone from the public would like to speak. They're welcome to approach the microphone. Just ask to state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to about 2 minutes or so.
Hi, my name is Heather Cardoza, and I live at 1439 East, 330 South. So I'm the house directly east of Gaye Lee Page, next door. I've lived next door to Gaye Lee for about 2 years. During this time, I've observed and been a part of various friends and family gatherings in her home. She's a loving and caring grandmother to 12 grandchildren. The idea that she wants to enlarge her home into a more open and useful space for her needs is a reasonable and wise decision. Her home is one of the few in our area neighborhood without a basement. Most older homes that now entertain extended families offer a basement or a second floor to send the children to or have larger family gatherings. This allows for a larger dining room table or larger entertaining area to allow the family and larger visiting families to gather around together. Gaye Lee's home does not give this option. It makes sense for her to take the existing footprint of her home and turn it into usable family space. The few feet that she wants to use to extend her garage to allow her to use her home to its fullest extent, while also keeping an enclosed garage for her vehicle. Given the harsh winters Utah has, it's safer and more suitable for Gaye Lee to keep her vehicle shielded from the environment. There's little or to no concern of vehicles blocking the sidewalk or being a hazard from the garage extension that she wishes to add. As you can see from the photo that's on the screen right now, the house directly to the west or on the left side of her home as we're looking at this photo offers a much larger driveway footprint than the one that Gaye Lee currently has. So I think the continuity wouldn't be changed that much given the size of other driveways in the neighborhood, such as the one next door to her. I think granting her this request would allow her to use the home to the best of her advantage. She has always been a very neat and tidy person. Her yard has always been well trimmed and cared for, and I know that she would do the same in adding this addition. So thank you for your time.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Hello, my name is Lars Bjorn. I live at 1455 East, 330 South, 2 houses to the east of Gaye Lee. I guess as I've been sitting here listening and thinking about Gaye Lee's request and thinking about anything that me personally we're considering in regards to our home, I would like to point out that this neighborhood is a very serviceable neighborhood still in Provo. It's not the kind of neighborhood that's ready to be bulldozed and replaced with other buildings, but given that fact, it's also buildings that are roughly 60 years old, that were built in a time when house needs, both for vehicles and families, were very different. The fact that the current Provo City Code does not necessarily reflect how those homes were built at the time, in my opinion, should allow for some variance in order to maintain the serviceability of the homes in these very vibrant neighborhoods that still have some life in them. Gaye Lee's house is, I would say, somewhat cramped. It's a, it's a lovely home, but the living space, perhaps the overhead view doesn't provide. There's barely enough room in that front room for a small sectional and a television. It's quite small. To the driveway situation, as Heather noted, I don't think that it would be any significant impact for the driveway to be widened. And given the visual, which again, you probably can't see terribly well from the overhead, there's a very large tree and a fence along the east edge of her front yard. So visually, having a garage that extends beyond the current setback ruling would not impede anyone's view. It would not impede anyone's ability to drive down the street appropriately. That's my 2 cents.
Hi, I feel very unprepared. My home is 1434 East, 330 South. I see Gaye Lee's house. That's my view.
Hey, and what's your name?
Kirsten Bascom.
Thank you.
Because it's my view, I would love nothing more for Gaye Lee to have that space. She has grandkids. Lars is saying it is cramped. You go in there, even with my 4 kids, because she invites anybody in, it's cramped. Now, to speak really quickly on the back, I know you were kind of asking about, like, hey, tell us what the back looks like. It is a sledding hill. My 4 kids sled on that hill. That's how ridiculous it would be to try to you have probably like 4 steps and then you're down, you're shooting down. I have nothing else to say, but I think she should have it. And there's no way she could go back. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Allison Cutler. I'm at 1285 East, 350 South, 360 South. And I have also been in Gaye Lee's home, and her dining room, not serviceable. There is a fireplace with a hearth, and then she has a very small table. But if she could even put chairs around the table, she wouldn't have room to pull the chairs out to get in to sit at the table. So making that space more usable using the current footprint and extending that garage out a little bit would just make her home definitely more usable. I don't know, did you mention, I just got here a little late, did she mention that she had to get a very small car and before she would even purchase it to see if it could even fit into the garage? So the dealer drove it over and they fit it into the garage, but her windows or her side view mirrors have to come in order to even fit into the garage. So asking for that little bit of space, I don't think is going to substantially cause I think the variance is required in order for her to make the most of her home. And we definitely want to keep her in the neighborhood. I think she is definitely an asset to our community. And if she had to move in order to have a home that would make more sense for her family, we would all be terribly sad. Thank you.
No, I already spoke, but can I just say one more thing? Is that allowed?
Well, let's allow this other.
Oh, yes.
Hi, I'm Erin Danelle Bjorn. I live in 1455 East, 330 South. So again, 2 houses to the east. The image, the overhead image of the house is, there's nothing on there that's saying the scale. Unfortunately, it doesn't have, it's got an image of a car. I don't know what kind of car that is, but that is not a contemporary car. She drives a teeny little car and it barely fits in her garage. Yeah, it's a Fiat. And it barely fits into her garage. And like was said, she had to make sure it even could get in. We have the same problem with our garage. We can't park a vehicle in it at all because of how narrow it is. I knew the family who lived there previously. We've lived in the neighborhood for a good 14 years. It's a fantastic neighborhood. They had 3 small children, but their house was so cramped. Gaye Lee's house was so cramped that they had to go and find another place to live because they couldn't fit that many people around their kitchen table. It's tiny. I've been there for book club and you've got people like half sitting in other rooms and on top of each other. I feel like the addition to the home and the expansion of that open space will service the neighborhood and service the home for future use to come, because that small space, it lends itself to high turnover, and that isn't an asset to the community. It doesn't build the neighborhood as well as the people who are living there long term. And I think that makes it a little more ideal for use to expand it.
Hi, my name is Kathy Trainer. I do not live in that neighborhood, but I do know Gaye Lee. And taking the physical home, putting that aside right now, Gaye Lee is the kind of person that you want representing as a resident in your city. As you can see, as you've heard, all of these people have been in her home, and the neighborhood altogether is quite impressive with just the people standing here. So it's just such a great representation of who she is and the neighborhood that she lives in. And that's the kind of resident that you all want, I think.
Are you still wanting to make a comment? If there are no other comments, we can give you another 30 seconds and then we'll close public comment.
I just had a few thoughts come to my mind, listening to everybody comment tonight. Like the Kathy Lee just said, all of that aside, Gaye Lee is a very big addition to our neighborhood, and allowing her to have a home that she could comfortably live in with her family. She's the most caring and giving person. The day I moved in, she came walking over with her pen and her notepad, and I had people helping me, and she's like, everyone, I just want to know who is my new neighbor. I want to meet her and introduce myself. And she's offered anything I needed to just come over, and it just really helped. She's been the catalyst in our neighborhood, and we would love to see her get the dream of her home that would allow her a comfortable living area for years to come. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll close the public comment portion of the meeting. And that allows us as a board to begin to deliberate. So who would like to offer some thoughts, get us started?
Well, as I'm looking at this, the fact that the property is substantially similar to other properties along that road, but the way that it was developed is not. And so I look at that and I do see that does have some impact on the way that I'm looking at it. I'm also looking at factor number 5, where it talks about the spirit of the title and substantial justice being done. And I do think that what she's requesting is not contrary to the spirit of the title, in that she is planning to allow adequate parking space, even though she'll be encroaching into the setback somewhat. So I'm not really that uncomfortable with this request. I want to know how it fits with the factors that we need to consider, that we are obliged by ordinance to follow.
I always share first, and I'm always opinionated about this stuff, but and I'll probably share after my initial stuff, but just going over the initial 5 criteria that we have to go by. I believe, this is my personal opinion on things, the spirit of the law, that's great. The variance won't affect the general plan, that's fine. Granting this variance is essential to the enjoyment of substantial property right for other property in the same district. I believe that falls into that category as well, and it's met. The tough ones that I want to at least just deliberate with you guys on is the first 2 is the second one is special circumstances that don't generally apply. I actually think that's met because it's a unique situation with the building as is, and the property is different than a normal property with slopes and whatever that make it harder. The first one's going to be the hard part because and we can talk about what that is, but literal enforcement of this title would cause unreasonable hardship for the applicant. And often people say the unreasonable hardship is they say, well, it would cost too much money to do it a different way. And I've been reprimanded in the past for not following that. But that doesn't constitute an unreasonable hardship. Money isn't an unreasonable hardship. It is I believe, for the common person. But for city code, it's not an unreasonable hardship. It's more of a, I can't build it anywhere else. And so this is my only option, and that's my unreasonable hardship. And so that one I want to just discuss with you guys, because there is some case for that, I believe. But I believe that everything else is met. It's just figuring out if if there's an unreasonable hardship in this case that isn't monetary. I think that's my initial thoughts on the case.
So here are my thoughts. I agree with a lot that Wes said. I think that the placement of the home, and could we go back to the overhead view of the home, please? Thank you. Looking at the home and how close it is to the house on the west, and how close the house on the east are to the boundary lines, that doesn't allow Ms. Page's house to be expanded at all to the west or the east. The topography of the backyard doesn't allow her house to be expanded to the north. So the only place she can go is to the south, but she has to contend with the setback. My feelings are she's only asking for a 5-foot setback, which does go against the Provo City Code, which says that a 20-foot setback, it needs to be maintained. I feel that this does cause an unreasonable hardship, because she is boxed in, if you will, on the 3 sides that she cannot build, and she doesn't have a basement, which most of the people in her neighborhood do have. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. While it does meet the standard for a single family home, the space inside limits how many people she can have in her home, and she has a large family. She could move and buy a bigger home, but she doesn't want to do that. And I think that that I lean towards allowing this variance, because she isn't able to build onto her home in any other area, any other direction, like her neighbors have the opportunity to do. The granting the variance would not substantially affect the general plan, and I do not believe would be contrary to the public interest, because it allows her to stay in her home and continue to be a part of the neighborhood where she's obviously loved. And I think that by granting the variance, that justice is served and the spirit of the title is still being observed. I think those are all my comments for now. I may have something later.
I want to first say thank you to everyone who showed out and the applicant. And I know in your letter we got, you made some comments about how we can't really judge you and your circumstances, and that's right. And I want to make sure, that I feel like you're probably a great member of the community, and everyone came out to support you and loves you, but we kind of have to look at the property itself, because how would the neighborhood be impacted? And if your family circumstances change and you leave and there are 0 functioning parking spaces on the property because there's only 15 feet in the driveway, and a tiny garage that's not a functional garage that might work for you, but in the future, we'd be leaving the neighborhood without any. People would be forced to park on the street or block the sidewalk, and that's one of the things I'm most concerned about.
Just to clarify comment, I thought I heard Mrs. Uryaga say, or maybe I misunderstood. If a new driveway is poured to the east of the existing driveway, that can actually go up to the property line. There's no setback for a parking space like that. So that certainly would help in staff's opinion to have a parking space that's at least 20 feet deep to the side of the existing driveway.
Thank you.
I certainly appreciate the comments that have been made. I think it does behoove someone, and I'll take that unpopular role, to represent. I think maybe that a couple of the more uncomfortable positions. And I think that really does, like, as you said, probably sit with the first 2 conditions. I think indeed this is an unusual, topography. And if this were, the only property, in that area that had that unusual slope, then I think this would certainly qualify. Given that it is shared by neighbors and other builds have accommodated that in different ways, I think whatever our decision, I think we need to be clear in how we're assessing the topography. I think that's a tricky one to overcome, and the other being that the title entitles the owner to a substantial property right to have a one family home which exists, and not to a right to expand said home as much as it might be desirous. Now what I would love you to do now is just talk me out of that. Because I certainly like to find a way that we can make this work if we really can't satisfy those 2. Those continue to be concerns from me, though.
Okay, so spirit of the title. I mean, the interesting thing about all this is that it does all interact, right? So spirit of the title, we do spirit of the title and property right possessed, the essential enjoyment. It is our right to expand homes. It is our right, and it's within our purview to do whatever we want with our homes within the zone. So if she wants to expand, then she can expand, and that's totally within her purview and within her rights. And I do, I think that if these other houses, to your point, Andrew, did have this problem and they were able to figure it out and build something according to the property, then, you know, that's how it was built. It wasn't I don't think, and we don't know all the information, but I don't think they were built as add-ons. I think that changes how it, right? Because if it's built, then trying to build down without a basement, then that would change the structure of integrity of the building, in which changes the structure and the stability of it. And maybe it's not even buildable back there because of the situation. I just don't know if it's buildable or not. I mean, maybe if you had lots of resources, you could figure something out to build back there. And that's where I'm a little bit stuck, but I'm leaning more to where Maria is, and just that there isn't a lot of options for properties. And my only, and staff might say the same thing. The concern is that we approve this and then down the road, other houses come and say, hey, you guys approved this exact same thing. And we have that slope back there too. And I think that's my main concern with it, is that it suddenly is like, well, everybody's doing it, so we get it. And I'm not saying you guys will or not, but there is precedent that we set
I'm comfortable in assuming us as a non-precedent setting body. I don't think we're bound by previous decisions, although
we aren't, right?
But I mean, you're right. Fairness still plays a role in all of
and
this.
if they come and present the exact same argument, saying that it's a slope back there and the only way is forward, and so then we have to grant variances for this whole street, and maybe we do. I don't know, but we're not. I guess we do take it case by case. I will say that, but that becomes problematic if and that's why we stick to these 5 criteria, is that case by case, we say, can you build anywhere else? That's why I asked if you could potentially build within the real realms to the left. It might be a little bit more money, but you'd be able to have that space still in the front yard within the space that you need. You don't change your garage. That I know that you haven't planned for that. But part of me kind of feels like there are some options maybe that aren't variance required, but maybe there isn't, and you're coming to us saying, hey, this is the only option that I see. And so, as my, I personally believe that it's close enough to the unreasonable hardship with the back slope that I'd probably be voting in favor of the variance in this case specifically. But I'm kind of on the fence, and there's no offense to you, because and these guys all know I fight for trying to vote for the public in like almost all the things. And maybe that's why I'm getting fired. I don't know. We'll see.
You're not being fired.
But anyway, I just want to say, Gaye Lee, that I do appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your presentation. And we're deliberating so much about this because we want to figure out a way to say, yeah, this is a go, and that doesn't mean a go for the whole neighborhood, because we just grant variances as they come and set precedent that way. So those are some of my continued thoughts on this, but I think that I'm leaning more towards approving, but that doesn't mean everyone is.
So as I'm looking at these factors, is it required? I'm one of the newer members of the board, so that the issues with the property are inherent to the property as a property, or is it dealing with the property as it exists and has been developed?
Bill?
It's supposed to be, the hardship is supposed to be related to the property itself, not to what was built. Because what was built was an active function of somebody. And if what they built isn't appropriate or adequate, that's a self-created hardship, which state law says you can't approve a self-created hardship and you can't approve an economic hardship. So it's the property, not the structure, that the hardship is supposed to apply to.
Okay. So that's one of the issues that we need to look at. The fact that it is so constrained on three sides makes me wonder whether it is possible. Another thought that occurs to me is that if it could be extended along the front, that would require some adjustment to the roof line, which would be, I know, extremely expensive. One of the things that can be done with that, though, is gables in another room. But that is not something that's proposed. It seems to me that what was done with the property was not probably the most effective use of it. But as Bill says, that we can't look at it. Other than that factor, I am definitely inclined to say, yes, we should grant the variance, but I don't know how to work around that particular factor.
Are you referring to one or two?
To one.
Okay.
I think with two, there is something of a special circumstance. I think that one is referring specifically to the property. I think two could actually incorporate the fact that the side properties have encroached on it and in ways that probably would not be approved at this point in time, but they exist. And so there is, to some extent, there's a constraint that has been caused not by the property owner, but by the city allowing other owners in the vicinity to encroach on what her options are.
I appreciate the applicant and her willingness to invest in her property and make Provo a better place. I have a question from looking at this picture. I don't know if the property owner or the staff can answer it, but it appears like some of the other properties have driveway access on 300 South, including parking structures built there. Is there a reason why this property would not be able to do that? It looks like they might even have a driveway in the curb behind the property.
300 South is a state road, and I don't believe anybody would get a new access. Any that are there must have been there historically, and I would assume that if they're still there, it's because you not had to respect them because they were already there. Are those still there? The accesses, that lot next door, is that still there? Yes or no? Is it still there?
What? On her property?
Right there. Is that access still there today?
Yes.
That was my question. So accesses like that are still there today after the roadwork that's been done on 300 South must have been there historically, but because it's a state road and because it's a collector road, you wouldn't be able to get one today.
Thank you.
My only comment on that is just to kind of go along, if I am on the fence about this. But if we did approve, I would feel a lot more comfortable if we made sure that it's approved with the requirement that there is additional parking on the property, so that it isn't a future or current problem for parking. And basically there is a rule that we have that's the 20 feet, and we're adjusting that by 5 feet, but changing some parking. And so if we were to approve it, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable unless there was a requirement to have that additional parking available so that it's not hanging over onto the sidewalk. I know that's in the plans, but just making that conditional if we were to approve it. That's kind of my thought on it, but I don't have a lot more to say, to be honest. I'm still on the fence, but yeah, if anyone's feeling strongly in one way or another, we probably could move forward.
I wonder, do we have enough general consensus to formulate, for it to be worth formulating a motion at this point? Where am I at? Frankly, I think, if I'm just looking letter of the law, I probably don't see the case. I am also generally aware that we can kind of, decide how we want to interpret these, these requirements, and that probably could make it work.
The fact that the requirements require us to consider the spirit of the law as well as the letter of the law, the weight of those, I think that having this is continuing to be a single family home on a single family lot. It makes it a more functional single family home. And Provo has a commitment to supporting families and encouraging families. So I see that as a value. I see this actually as a greater value to the neighborhood than I do to the single home. And that makes the spirit of it seem to me like it should have additional weight. I'm still sort of on the fence with number one, as to whether that overcomes the fact that I'm not sure that we can say it's definitely in hardship, but whether that is unreasonable within the bounds of the language. I have concerns about that.
I have one more question for you. And I kind of haven't been wanting to ask this, but just, is your property unique in the slope, or are all the houses sloping?
There are several who slope. I'm sorry, people talk nice about me. From where I can see, at least 4 of those homes have that same slope, but they've put basements in, so they have walkout basements.
That helps.
Okay.
I
Oh,
appreciate
and
it.
I
your
think,
other
I mean, I
question?
think in this case, I mean, as far as number two is concerned, we're talking about, special circumstances. I think, the fact that it only applies to a few homes, but not to properties kind of in the district generally, I think in my mind is enough to overcome that test.
That was my question. I
Okay, and
appreciate
to
it.
your other point, Wes, if I may, I've been thinking about going out the front. It's only like 10 feet wide. So I'd have to go all the way to the street to get the same effect. I don't think you'd approve that.
Okay. Yeah, I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thanks
that.
for that option though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so for me, it's the reason I didn't want to ask that question is because the houses have made it work with the slope. And meaning that if we're going back to a economic hardship, it is very possible for you to dig out and build up. It's unless the city or the locations, I know you have a comment, but unless the city or the locations have said this is unbuildable, meaning you cannot build in the backyard, unless you have somebody, a professional that has come and said you cannot build here, it makes it really hard for us, at least for me, to say, yeah, you can't build back there. And if somebody came and said that is not buildable, then that changes at least my decision. If it's buildable by bringing in a bunch of dirt and packing it down or whatever it is, how people build, I know it's more money, but if it's buildable, then it's not really unreasonable hardship. Because there are swamps, there are things that you literally cannot build on. And so that's kind of where, that's why I wanted to ask, because there are opportunities to build in the back potentially, but anyway, I know I'm throwing a wrench in things a little bit. Sorry, but that's kind of where my conscience is going.
That could be an option if I wanted a bigger kitchen. But the point is, we need the room over here, not back there. That makes sense. Questions?
Am I allowed to make a comment regarding what you just said?
I don't think we'll open up for additional public comment.
I am. Am I allowed to say something?
Come on. State your profession too.
Sorry, I have been a contractor. I'm not currently a licensed contractor, but I have done. What I will tell you is that, again, what is not seen here is that not only does the grade go downward to the north, it also slopes from east downward to the west at a fairly high rate. So the drop in our backyard is significantly higher than the drop in Gaye Lee's backyard. That being said, the only way to do what is proposed would be to raise the house and start from the foundation up. There is not enough space underneath the current first floor to build a floor underneath it. That's why the house to the west sits at a higher roof level than her house, because the first floor level is significantly higher than hers, because there is a basement built underneath it to code. So the first floor is already at a higher level. So again, the only way for that to be feasible would be to raise the house and start from the foundation up.
Or you would, or potentially bringing dirt in and building it flat across. You can.
You'd have to build
can
it all.
raise.
But essentially, if you did that, then the dirt would be at the level of the cinder block wall at the back, the top of the cinder block wall at the back of her property.
Yeah, depending on how far back you go, right? But if you build that whole space, yeah, for sure. Right, but it's possible, right? Or is it unbuildable? That's
So
what we're trying to get to.
So
right?
the question I have is, a story is 9 feet or is it 10?
Depending.
And you're telling us that there is not 9 feet below the floor level to go down. Or
Right.
to
Yeah, from
bring
where the floor level is presently
Yeah, that
of
makes
her
sense.
house, you couldn't go down 8-9 feet.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense. I'm talking more.
You would
just
have to dig out the backyard in order to have.
which would of course cause drainage issues.
Right.
So that does make it sound to me like it is essentially unbuildable. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
helpful.
Lars Bjorn.
Did you have a comment, Maria? Okay. So this is not a motion. This is a draft of a motion. Let me kind of throw this out. So let's say we say that we want to overturn staff's recommendation, approve the variance, finding that due to the size and topography, of the property, that literal enforcement would cause unreasonable hardship. Poke holes. What do you think?
I'm a little less inclined or persuaded by the topography issue versus the city allowing the other property to be built so close to the property line and to their property, and potentially that UDOT created an impassable barrier in the backyard. Those seem to me more like unreasonable
It is
things that were
relevant
imposed
that
on her.
it is relevant that the state road does add restrictions that would not have been there or considered or contemplated.
Mhm. And those are more persuasive as being unreasonable hardships to me than the topography, because I think that might be expensive, but they could technically be overcome. But UDOT building a road that's impassable and then blocking access to the back is not a reasonable hardship, or is unreasonable.
Yeah, and again, if we do a motion for denying or overturning staff's recommendation, we can cite both. The main point with this is that we do have to cite something to say that's why. So whether it's that or that, unless you disagree, or both, yeah, we could say citing these number of issues, making it feasible to overturn staff's recommendation. And
of course, I mean, I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but of course, on the condition of adding additional sufficient parking.
That would be my.
I agree with that.
Where are you at, Maria?
I'm still in favor of granting the variance. I've heard what everybody has said about upholding staff's opinion or finding. But I still agree agree with myself uh, with what I stated earlier. And feel that, and additionally, the other things that have been mentioned with 300 South not allowing entrance into our backyard, just additional things that have been mentioned. I think that there is a reasonable hardship for her to make her home workable in any other way. I'm sorry, I had another question, but now oh, Bill, is there a time frame that she would have to construct the driveway? If that's part of our motion and it's passed, is she given a time allowance to construct that?
I think if the variance is approved, there should be a condition about the driveway and when it should be completed. Usually it needs to be done when the certificate of occupancy is issued for this work. I think that's an integral part of this, and that should be part of the approval. Yes. As far as timing of the variance, if the variance is granted and she decided to wait 5 years to build it, that would be okay. A variance, once it's granted, runs with the land, and unless you put some kind of condition on time frame on when she needs to start, there would be no required start date under our code.
Okay, so it goes with the land and not the homeowner.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like all of us are leaning towards approving in one way or another.
So it sounds like you need to send us out in your last meeting with the motion.
I propose that we reject staff's recommendation and that we approve this variance citing the five statutes that are necessary for approving a variance. And most importantly, that everyone has been met. And most importantly, that the unreasonable hardship has been indicated as topography or previous hardships due to constraints on the property due to historical information, and that the way forward is to grant this variance with the stipulation that there is parking and a driveway built. And Bill, tell me what else. I feel like I've talked for 10 minutes here, but what else do I need to say?
So during your deliberations, you've stated a lot of findings, a lot of reasons why you think this is justified. I just need some of those stated as part of the motion, especially as they relate to those criteria. So I think most of them you've already addressed in your discussion. Let's just get those in as part of the motion.
So I mean, each clause you're saying, or what do you?
I imagine it's sufficient if we, outline the reasons why we believe literal enforcement would be unreasonable hardship. So if we citing the UDOT build, citing the topography and citing the encroachment from neighboring properties is probably enough.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, I already said topography, but topography, encroachment from other properties, the UDOT restrictions, all go into our outline of why it is unreasonable hardship. And with that,
if I might then just add that we do place the requirement that the driveway be completed before certificate of occupancy is
I think that's just
Just at that time.
automatically, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Contemporaneous.
Yep. Okay, cool.
And could I add as well that we do find that this particular property has circumstances that do not apply to other properties in the neighborhood, and that if denial of this request would violate the spirit of the title.
I approve adding that to my motion. So anybody
Can you
want
tell
to
we're
sit
actually
sit
just
down?
regular citizens doing our best?
Yeah. And I've been doing this for 5 years, so every time. Anybody want to second?
I'll second.
Okay, so Maria Winden seconds.
All right, Wes, why don't you start off our voting and we'll just come across, state your name and your vote.
I'm Wes Marriott, and I vote aye to the motion.
Laurie Urquiaga, I also vote aye to the motion.
Andrew Rennick, aye.
Maria Winden, aye.
Eric Chase, aye.
And with that, the variance is approved. Congratulations, and thank you so much for being willing to engage this civic process. We very much appreciate the participation tonight.
Thank you for your patience as we work through this.
And with that, our meeting is adjourned.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?